What I've noticed is this question around team maturity and how do you evolve the the operating maturity of a leadership team in particular, a top team especially. And so we have a particular context around that, but just this idea of how different stages of maturity open up different performance platforms. But what I'm noticing is a lot of folks are struggling with these gaps that are now starting to emerge and sort of how do I close the gap? What is it that I'm experiencing versus what am I requiring? And how do I start to mitigate the development that has to happen both collectively and individually? And I think it's a heavy lift, and I do suspect all of the tension in the world, all of the, I mean, we talk about complexity a lot. Maybe the world has always been complex, but it just feels like it's fire hose kind of complexity now coming at you. And sort of a lot of individuals kind of going back into well-meaning but unproductive old habits. And I don't know. So I've just noticed, and it's been a couple of years since this idea of team maturity has risen up on the profile of the conversations I'm having. And there it is. So I don't know if you're seeing any of that or.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So the team maturity model, one of the things that it kind of says, the theory behind it is that the team actually performs at kind of that middle place. So you can have really highly developed leaders on a team and then not so highly developed. And it's like the center of gravity thought that
Yep.
like where the center of gravity of the team is kind of where they can perform. I actually have a little bit different perspective.
Mm.
And my perspective is you perform at the level of, you should expect performance at the level of the lowest evolved member of the leadership team. And here's why.
Okay. Yeah.
If I'm on a team and I can move to an integral frame, let's say, right? Or I can play creative integral back and forth. Because it's a transcend and include model, I can get to reactive with the right trigger and I can get to egocentric with the right trigger, right? Now, hopefully I'll be conscious enough in a moment to catch myself and pull myself out, or I might see a teammate do that and help, give them a bridge. But if you have somebody who is consistently being egocentric or reactive, I think they'll tank the team. And without the conscious awareness to know that's actually what's happening. So I think that's really interesting. And I think the other thing that's super interesting is that the team maturity model really comes into play, not when everything is really just like normal, basic, run of the mill, running the business stuff. We're talking about when, higher levels of complexity come in, which if there's any business right now that is not experiencing high levels of complexity,
Yeah.
give us a call because I'd love to talk.
Yeah. Wait till tomorrow. Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So as complexity gets higher and higher, what the team actually needs to do is different. At lower levels of complexity, it's more like kind of like swim lane thinking. I'll handle my swim lane, you handle yours. Everything will be fine if we both just swim along and we're good. And in that, what we generally need from our teammates is like a high performance, right? We've got a process, extrapolate the process, just keep it going, great best practices, all that kind of stuff. But in a high complexity model, when what's going on around you is very unstable, we actually need to be more like in a whitewater raft together. And, me giving you my resources, you fall over the boat, I pull you back in or whatever. But it's not like you stay in your swim lane, I stay in mine. And so if you have anyone that is not capable of holding the frame that we are all in this together and we all need to be challenging one another and supporting one another, if you can't hold that frame, I think you'll dip down to the lowest level of development.
Oh, that's not encouraging, Betsy. That makes it harder.
I know, right?
So I like the center of gravity theory
I
slightly
know,
more. That's right, exactly. The preponderance of evidence theory. It's like, well, most of you are okay, so I'm sure that'll make it fine. No, you all have to clear it. Otherwise,
Unfortunately, that's not how that works.
whoever's dragging their legs is gonna take the whole boat down with them, or whatever the metaphor is. I think you're right, and I also think it's one of those places where, in particular for team leaders and for CEOs or divisional heads, and not that it doesn't exist in all teams at all levels. But there's something about top teams when this is allowed to persist, it just drags down the whole organization, because it's not just the top team that gets stuck. It's everything that they are meant to be enabling also kind of comes to a halt. And so this idea of how do you step in as a leader and have that conversation, whoever's, got their legs, slung over the side of the boat and are dragging it down or keeping us from going to that next, level. How do you either develop them or develop a plan for, mitigating that? And sometimes that involves changing leaders. Yeah.
It does. It does involve changing leaders, which helps you get to that kind of succession frame,
Yep.
But also that requires a pretty significant level of consciousness of that senior leader
Yeah.
and knowing and understanding like what's really, really going on with my leaders, not the composed look that you often as a CEO will get, but the other stuff. I was talking with a CEO yesterday who's got a fantastic team. Like, I really love this team. One of the team's propensities, they tend to be really, really tough on themselves,
Mm-hmm.
like across the board by the individual. They're high creative. They think they're high reactive. They think that they're not as good as they are. And we were talking about what is his role in making sure that that aspect of their leadership develops. One, if that's not developed, then you can't really see what's actually happening. Like, if you can't take perspective on you as an asset accurately, then unfortunately you can't use that asset in the way that it was intended. So that's like part one, like why you should do that.
Yeah.
And like, what's the role of the CEO in noticing, okay, this person tends to over rotate on critical of self. What do we do about that? How do I help them? How do I see what they're actually bringing? How do I help them understand the contribution? And I think once they get that that's their job or their role, it can shift the way that whole team performs.